Kevin, look out! Frank shouted. He pointed at the falling boulder. Stop! Kevin held tight to the wheel and slammed on the brakes. The van bucked and began to skid sideways towards the edge of the drop. Frank grabbed the door handle and braced his feet against the firewall. As suddenly as it had started, the crisis ended. The van came to a stop in a thick cloud of yellow dust. Through it Frank saw the big rock rumble across the lane and disappear over the cliff. A moment later a clatter from below told him it had landed at the bottom. Phew, Joe said from the back seat. That was close. Do you have a lot of falling rocks in this area? Kevin backed up a few feet and straightened out. Let's put it this way, he said. At TVI, our unofficial motto is expect the unexpected. Why did that stone decide to start down the hill just then? No reason, but strange things happen around here. You'll get used to it. Frank opened his mouth to mention the stick he had seen. Then he decided to hold off. This was a new place with a new bunch of people. He wanted to get a sense of it and then before he started making waves. I should warn you guys about one thing, Kevin added as he set the van into motion again. Whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever the other kids try to tell you, keep this in mind. The Chateau of Hell is not haunted. Does that mean some people think it is? Joe asked. A muscle in Kevin's cheek twitched. It's not, he repeated in a louder voice. It's all a lot of nonsense. Pay no attention, you hear? They rounded a curve. The lane became a pair of rutted tracks, with a line of dusty-looking blades of grass growing between them. After a few dozen yards, the track ended at a flat, dusty field. A few vehicles were parked on the far side. They included a couple of cars, a battered motorcycle, and a small truck that looked as if someone had built it out of corrugated roofing. Beyond, a steep path snaked up the rugged slope to the clustered houses and the castle. Kevin pulled up next to the truck and stopped. What is that contraption? Joe asked, pointing to the truck. Kevin grinned. You are looking at the vintage Citroën camionette, he said. It is a collector's item, top speed about 40 miles an hour, with a tailwind, but it gets you where you're going. They got out and Frank and Joe grabbed their backpacks. Kevin swung open the rear door of the van. You want to give me a hand? He asked, pointing to the cardboard boxes on the floor. Sure, Frank replied. He got a grip on the nearest carton. It was heavy. Kevin grabbed another carton. Follow me. Frank glanced at Joe, then he gave a meaningful look at the steep climb to the village. They were already carrying loaded backpacks. Was this some kind of test? Well, if so, they were not going to wimp out on their first day. Joe took a box and followed after Kevin and Frank, who had stopped next to a wheeled platform about 3 feet square. A metal rail ran straight up the hillside towards the village. We're not totally primitive here, Kevin said, smiling. This lift is our lifetime. If we had to carry all our supplies up the hill on foot, who'd have energy left for our real work? Kevin set his carton on the platform. Frank and Joe did the same. Can it handle our packs too? Joe asked. Sure, Kevin replied. Put them on. He bent down, opened the door of a control panel, and flipped a switch. The platform moved silently up the hill. Frank noticed a counterweight gliding down the hill, At the same time, he realized they must be linked by a cable. Neat, Frank said. Designed and built by our TVI members, Kevin told them. The motor is up at the top. It runs off a solar panel. One thing we have plenty of around here is sunlight. Kevin started up the path. Frank touched Joe's arm and motioned with his head for them to fall back a little. In an undertone, he told Joe about the suspicious stick and his impression that there had been something stretched across the lane. You mean right before that rock almost hit us? Joe demanded. A booby trap. It wouldn't surprise me, Frank said. I'd like a look around where it happened. I wonder how we can manage that. By now Kevin was well ahead of them. He glanced back as if wondering what was holding them up. Frank and Joe started walking faster. The higher they went, the more the view opened up. Frank could see the whole width of the valley and much of its length. To the right in the distance, a sizable town spread across the valley. Nearer at hand, a humpbacked stone bridge across a dry stream bed. At the edge of the village, the path became a narrow street paved with rounded stones, set into the ground. A few of the houses were almost intact, but most were in ruins. Openings gaped where windows had been. Walls leaned out towards the street. Sky gleamed brightly through the holes in the upper floors and roofs. Joe looked around and shook his head. It might be easier to tear this place down and start over. Kevin led them to a complete house with urns of flowers on each side of a freshly painted blue door. A rack outside held 4 or 5 mountain bikes. He pushed the door open and called, Sophie, I'm back. I've got our new recruits with me. They went inside. The room was furnished as an office, with 2 computers, a laser printer, a scanner, and a fax. A woman in her 30s with short black hair stood up and came over to them. How do you do? She asked, shaking hands. Her English had a slight accent. Welcome to Frahel and TVI. Your roommates are supposed to be here to meet you and show you around. Ah, here they are. 2 guys rushed in and apologized to Sophie for being late. Frank looked them over. They were dressed similarly in khaki shorts and t-shirts, with the sleeves cut off. Otherwise, they could not have looked more different. One was slim, with carroty hair, a crop of freckles on his sunburned face and arms, and Hispanic accent. The other, with the height and heft of an NFL linebacker, looked African and sounded English. The redhead turned to Frank and Joe. Hi, he said. I am Louis O'Gorman from Buenos Aires, and this is Wally Freeman from Pretoria, South Africa. You are Joe and Frank. I know which is which. I know, but which is which? I am Joe, Joe said, the handsome blonde one, which must mean I am the brown-eyed smart one, Frank retorted. They shook hands all around. Some of the others are still finishing lunch, Wally said. Are you fellows hungry? We had something on the train, Joe replied. But that was a while ago, Frank quickly added. And a while to go until supper, Wally said with a smile. No restaurants in Frahel, you know. Come, we'll introduce you round and see what's left to eat. Frank and Joe thanked Kevin and went with the 2 guys. As they left the office, Joe pointed to the rat bikes. Do you guys ride a lot? He asked. Some, Wally said. There are nice trails along the ridge. Not too challenging. The bikes belong to different people, but they are usually good about landing them. They walked up the main street, and Frank gestured at the ruined houses on both sides. "How does a town get to be in such terrible shape?" he asked. "Everyone left," Louis told them. "Some moved to the valley. They wanted to be closer to their fields. The rest just left and never returned." Frank could tell there was more to the story. What was Louis not saying, and why was he holding back? They came to a cobblestone square where 15 or 20 wire folding chairs were scattered in clumps. Along the edge of the square some straggly trees fought to survive. On the far side was a stone building that stood taller than the others. Its red tile roofs looked new. So did the bright blue shutters framing its tall windows. "This is our community center," Wally said proudly. "In the old days it was the village school. I painted the shutters myself. I was bright blue for many days afterwards." Frank and Joe followed their guides inside. There were 2 big rooms. The first was furnished with a battered couch, some folding chairs, and a couple of old desks. A boombox sat the top of the bookcase with a stack of CDs. Louis led them through to the back room. A rutted wooden farmhouse table stretched the length of the room. The half-dozen people seated around it all turned to look at the Hardys. Wally introduced Joe and Frank, then said, "This is third host, Siri Banarake, Jean-Claude de Frahel, Marie-Laure de Frahel, Libby Faringhay." "Hold on," Frank protested with a laugh. "We can't learn everyone's names at once." A girl with light brown hair, put back in a ponytail, said, "No one expects you to. Here, sit down. Would you like some bread and cheese? It is a local goat cheese. Very good." Frank took the chair next to her. Joe found a place on the other side of the table. "Let's see," Frank said, after a bite of bread and cheese. "You are—" "My name is Marie-Laure," she replied. "I am afraid you Americans find it hard to say." Frank leaned forward and spoke to the guy on the other side of her. "And you're Jean-Claude, right? Are you two related?" Marie-Laure smiled. "We are twins, yet we do not look at all alike. Isn't that strange?" The guy next to Joe, with a square face and blonde crew cut, said, "You're speaking with our local celebrities. In fact, the village is called after them." Frank gave Marie-Laure a questioning look. Her cheek turned pink. "What Gertz means," she said, "is that the chateau and village of Frahel have been in our family for a long time. Hundreds of years, in fact." "You mean this village belongs to you?" Joe asked. "I don't get it. What about TVI?" Jean-Claude said, "Our father was the founder of TVI. He runs the village through the organization for a token sum. Imagine being rich enough to own a whole town," Siri said dreamingly, "and a castle." "You don't understand," Marie-Laure said. "We are not rich. We are poor. We cannot afford to pay the taxes and the chateau and the village. And now the government is considering if we must restore the chateau as a historic monument. Everything we have would not be even a fraction of what it would cost to do that." "What will you do if that happens?" Frank asked. Marie-Laure shrugged. "If TVI can raise enough money, maybe we will turn everything over to the group. If not, there are developers who would like to buy the town and chateau. They would make this a fancy resort for rich people, not a heaven for refugee children. A very great shame, but what can we do? If only we still had our ancestors' treasure. Dred gave a mocking laugh. That is no problem, he jeered. All you must do is ask the old guy where it is. Will he not tell you? In a silly voice, Jean-Claude said, I do not find this funny. Dred laughed again. No, but we do. These tales of old spooks howling in the wind and rattling the shutters. They are jokes. They are meant to draw tourists. The village is talked of in the press. The TV crews arrive, and hoopla! The family will sell the castle and town for a fortune. This after we sweat to rebuild it for nothing. Jean-Claude's face turned bright red. You, he sputtered. He grabbed a full glass of water off the table. He drew his arm back and flung the water in Dirk's face.